Hello everyone, welcome back to Atreyu Crochet. So in today's video, I'm going to be teaching you the Moroccan stitch. The cool thing about the Moroccan stitch is that you also get to learn another stitch called the V-stitch. So it's really like two for the price of one. Two tutorials built into one video. Things you will need include 2 stitch markers, a tapestry darning weaving needle, a crochet hook. For today I'm using the size 7mm just so that it's bigger and you guys can hopefully better see what's going on. And then 2 different color yarns. Now you might be looking at this and be thinking, that looks like more than 2 colors, Atreyu. But in actuality it's not. I have the brown color, which is the color 1 yarn, and then the other yarn is variegated and that's color 2. Okay, so just get yourself 2 different color yarns, color 1 and color 2. The reason that I'm making this video is because someone reached out to me on Instagram. They saw one of my scarves that I had made a while ago. It was during that period of time where I would occasionally crochet, but I wasn't uploading a lot, and so there is no tutorial to accompany that scarf that I made. But after today's video, you guys will be able to make your own. So if you've been wanting to learn the Moroccan stitch for a while now, but you're afraid that it's just too complicated for you, hopefully I can make it very simple for you in today's video. Let's get started. So as I said, we're using 2 colors. You need at least 2 colors for this. Obviously you can use more colors. You saw in the scarf that I made that I definitely use more than 2 colors. But let's start from the basics. So my color 1 is this white yarn, and that white yarn will be equivalent to the brown that you see here. Okay, this color back here, we'll see how much output it gives. It's always kind of hard to guess when it's in a ball because I'm so used to it being in, just the regular skein. But anyway, this color is going to be the parts that are kind of in between those V stitches there. So this color will be that variegated yarn, and this white yarn will be where the brown is. So if you're about to make a scarf, you can kind of try to imagine how it will look and choose your yarns accordingly. White for me is color 1, and this turquoise will be color 2. So we're going to start with a slip knot like we do in so many of my tutorials. Insert your hook, and now you want to chain a multiple of 3. Okay, so some number that is a multiple of 3. Let's do 3 times 4. Okay, so that's 12. So let's chain 12 stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And this band that I have on is making a lot of noise, so let me take that off right now so you don't get too annoyed with me. Okay, so that's 12 chains, and now that you have your multiple of 3, so the 12, now you want to chain 4 more stitches. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're going to put a double crochet into the 5th chain from the crochet hook. So we're bypassing those 4 chains that we just made, and in that 5th chain that my thumb is on, that's where we're going to put our first double crochet. So yarn over, go into the double crochet, yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. Now we're going to chain 1, and this is where we're going to create our V-stitch. So the double crochet, the chain 1, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to go back into that same chain that this first double crochet is in. So just go back in there, yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. And if you guys can see, that's the first V-stitch. That chain 1 sort of makes the 2 double crochets split. It kind of makes them part, and so it creates that V. Alright, so that's a V-stitch. whenever you do a stitch, chain one, and then do the same stitch in the same stitch below, in this case the same chain, it creates a V. Alrighty, so now what we're going to do is we're going to skip the next 2 stitches. So if ever you get confused which is the next stitch, just tug up on the current stitch to see where it's coming from or which stitch it's entered into. It's in that one. So this is the next chain, that's the next chain. So we're skipping those 2, 1, 2, and then here we're going to put another double crochet. We're not going to chain 1 first, okay? So after this double crochet, we just immediately make another double crochet, skipping these 2 chains below and going into that 3rd stitch. And creating that double crochet. Alright, and because we're making another V-stitch, we're going to chain 1. And yes, put another double crochet back into that same chain. That and that. Okay, so that's what we have so far. We have this series of chains, those 4 chains that we skipped at the very beginning. Then we did a V-stitch, skipped 2 chains, did another V-stitch. We're going to skip 2 chains, yarn over. Notice I didn't chain 1 first. And then I'm going to go into that 3rd chain. Go away and create another V-stitch. So double crochet, chain 1, go back in there, and create another double crochet. Alright, so far I have 3 V-stitches. 1, 2, 3. Skip 2 more chains, 1, 2, and go into that 3rd one there, and create another V-stitch. Chain 1, go back in there, same chain, and make your 2nd double crochet. So remember, the only time you chain is within the V-stitch. You chain to cause those double crochets to kind of go in different directions, to kind of slant away from one another. Alright, so we have 4 V-stitches, and now we're left with 2 chains. So we're going to put a double crochet into that last chain. So we'll skip that first one, and then in the last one just put a double crochet so that it's symmetrical. Okay, it's symmetrical because on this end you started with those 4 chains, right? And that's kind of equivalent to a stitch in and of itself. So the series of chains and then the V-stitch. If we look over here, we have this stitch and then the V-stitch. So it's symmetrical. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 V-stitches, and then we have that one lone stitch on either side. Now we're going to pull up on our loop, and this is where we're going to insert our stitch marker. The reason we put that on there is so that if you tighten this, it can't unravel. Your work will not unravel. Okay, so just put that on there to hold the work in place. And now we're going to introduce color 2. And with color 2, you always work into the V stitches. So this is a V stitch. We work into the center of the V stitch. So we'll be working it between there, between there, between there, and between there. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to not turn our work. Notice we didn't turn our work. We're still looking at the front side. And we are going to do what is called a standing double crochet. So basically, you're going to take your yarn, you're going to wrap it twice, okay, like that. And then we're going to go from the front to the back, like that. Yarn over, pull it through to the front, and then yarn over, go through 2. And notice I'm holding this tail right here, okay. So go through 2, 1, 2, and then yarn over, go through 2, 1 and 2. All right, now I can let go. Then I'm going to chain 1. We'll worry about this tail later, but it's not going to come loose, okay? And like I said, we're going to be working in the center of each V-stitch, What I didn't tell you is that we're also going to be creating V-stitches with this color 2 yarn. So that's why I chained 1 after that standing double crochet. So now I'm going to yarn over, go back into that same V-stitch, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. Alright, so that's our first V-stitch. And yes, it is supposed to be kind of over, it's not on the edge. We'll deal with that later, you'll see. Okay, so now it's time to work into the next V-stitch, which is here. So we'll yarn over, go into the center of that V-stitch. You can move that tail out of the way. Then yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. Because we're making the V-stitch, we need to chain 1 now, and then go back in there and create another double crochet. Yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. So far we've made 2 V-stitches, and each V-stitch is in the V-stitch below. Alright, time to move to the next V-stitch. Yarn over, go into the V-stitch, yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, chain 1, and go back in there, put another double crochet. Alright, 3 V-stitches. Moving on to this last V-stitch, yarn over, go into the V-stitch, pull through to the front, go through 2, go through 2, chain 1, because I'm making a V-stitch now, and go back in there, create another double crochet. Alrighty, so that is what we have. Okay, it is supposed to look like this. It may look very incomplete, right? It looks like we didn't start early enough, and it also looks like we didn't go all the way to the end, and we didn't, and that is intentional for now. But you guys are going to see what we're going to do with this. So now we're going to pull up on this loop and use our other stitch marker to mark this stitch. If you don't have to, you can just take the one off of the white and put it on this one, and because we're going to use that one next anyway, but it's easier if you have to. So now that both stitch markers are on one side, now we're going to turn our work. Okay, so the stitch marker for the white, which is color 1, is here on this end. The stitch marker for the turquoise is on this end as well. So now we can turn our work. Now it's time to work with color 1, okay, the white. So what we're going to do is take the stitch marker off, insert our hook, and just kind of arrange your yarn so that it's not getting tangled. Okay, that's going to be very important. Alright, so now that I've gotten my yarn rearranged, and I think I've achieved an even better camera angle, let's continue. So now we're on row 3. So the white was row 1, which was color 1, color 2 was row 2, and now we're back to white, which is row 3. So we're going to do a chainless starting double crochet. The way you do that is you pull up a little bit on the loop, you hold the yarn here in place, okay? And you can kind of put your finger on the back side a little bit, okay? Wrap it around like that, yarn over, and pull, still holding that loop right there, that back loop, this one right here. Alright, and now we're going to yarn over again, okay? And then you're going to take this thumb and hold it there, you can release, and then go through the 2 loops, okay? That is a chainless starting double crochet. Let's do it again just to make sure you got it. Alright, so your loop will be normal size. You're going to pull up on it a little bit, put your finger back there to hold that, because if you don't, it's just going to rotate, right? So hold it, and then turn your hook around like that, so that, see how it held in place and now it looped around. Now we're going to yarn over, pull through like that, yarn over, now take this thumb and hold it in the front and pull through like that. Okay, now we're going to chain 1, and in between this stitch and that first part of that V-stitch, so down in there, that space, that's where we're going to create another double crochet. You should already know that because I chained one, what I was really doing is making a V-stitch. Okay, so this is the first V-stitch of this row. The V-stitch was created by this chainless starting double crochet, chaining one, and then creating another double crochet relatively in the same area. Okay, it's kind of going that way and that way. Alrighty, moving on. So whenever we do this row working with color 1 from this point on, we're going to be creating V-stitches in between the V-stitches. Okay, so remember with color 2, we actually worked inside the V-stitches. See, color 2 is in that V-stitch, color 2 is in that V-stitch, color 2 is in that V-stitch. Well, now that we're working with color 1 again, we're going to be working in between the V-stitches. So let's look at the V-stitches of color 2. This is a V-stitch, that's a V-stitch, that's a V-stitch, and that's a V-stitch. We're going to be working in between them, so we're going to be working in between there, and in between there. Also, one thing to note is that we're not going to insert our hook up here. We're going to go down. So we're going to go down 2 rows. We're currently on row 3. We're going to bypass row 2 and go down to row 1. And that's where we're going to create our double crochet. Okay, so yarn over. And you can see that this is the next space. Okay, so here's the first V-stitch. And we're crocheting in between the V-stitches, so this is the next area. We're not crocheting into row 2, but into row 1. So go down there. Okay. Yarn over. Pull through to the front. Okay, 3 loops. Yarn over, go through 2. Yarn over, go through 2. Okay. Chain 1. Go back in there and create another double crochet. So yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. Okay. So you have a V-stitch here, and you have a V-stitch here. This V-stitch is in between this one, which got smashed down, and this one, which is going to be smashed down when I make my next V-stitch. Okay. So that's how it's supposed to look, and on the back side, this is just kind of hanging back there. We'll deal with that later. Okay, so moving on. Remember, for row 3, we're working in between the V-stitches instead of in the V-stitches. So the next one is going to go here, right? Why? This is a V-stitch, this is a V-stitch. So this area is in between the V-stitches, and the reason that we're going here is because remember we have to go back down to row 1. So yarn over for the double crochet, go in there, yarn over, pull through to the front, 3 loops on our crochet hook, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, and because we're creating a V-stitch here, we chain 1 and put another double crochet into that same space. And you can see now that that V-stitch got smushed as well. Moving on, yarn over. So we yarned over, and now the next place to go is in between this V-stitch and this one, but down at row 1. So we go down there, yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, chain 1, go back in there. There we go. Okay. So these V-stitches are going in between the V-stitches of color 2 and row 2, but we're not quite done. Think about how we started this row. We created a V-stitch, right? So yes, there's a V-stitch here, but over here we need something else, right? Okay, if we take a look like that, yeah, we definitely need to do something else at the end of this. So what we're going to do is yarn over, and we're going to put a double crochet into this double crochet there. Okay, so you have these series of chains and then it's double crochets. So in that double crochet, we're going to put a double crochet. But remember, we want to create a V-stitch because there's a V-stitch. We started with the V-stitch, so we want to end with one. So we want to chain one now, and then just put another double crochet in the top chain there. So just go into the top chain, those series of chains, and then create a double crochet. And now you see there's a V-stitch. Okay, so V-stitch, 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 V-stitch. And these V-stitches were crocheted in between the previous V-stitches. Now we're going to increase our loop and put a stitch marker on. Now at this point, if you're wondering whether or not you should turn your work, well, remember, you can only turn your work when both stitch markers are on the same edge or end. Okay, so this stitch marker is over here. Where's the other stitch marker? Oh, it's still down there on this side. So we can't turn our work yet. So we'll put that down, and then we will take this stitch marker off. And right now this loop is in the back. So what we want to do is bring it forward. Remember, with color 2, in this case the turquoise yarn, you always work in the V-stitches. So here's a V-stitch, so we should be working there, and there, and there, and there, and in there when we get down there. Okay, so to bring this forward, we're just gonna take our crochet hook through like that, put the loop onto the crochet hook and pull that forward, and then we can tighten it. Okay, and now we're going to create a standing double crochet. So lift up on the loop a bit, that just a little bit, hold it, yarn over. Okay, if I don't hold it, now look what's going to happen. See, that's why you hold it. So hold it, wrap it like that, now yarn over, and still hold it until you get all the way through there like that. Now you can let it go if you want because it's secure. Yarn over and you hold it here, and then bring that through like that through those two, and that's your standing double crochet. Chain one because it's a V-stitch, and we're going to go back in there into the V-stitch. So just stick your hook in there, make sure you're not catching on to anything. Okay, and then yarn over, pull through to the front, 3 loops, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. Okay, so that's our first V-stitch of this row. And remember, with color 2, this turquoise color, we only work in the V-stitches. So this V-stitch is in that V-stitch. The next place for a V-stitch is here. So let's get to crocheting. Chain 1, and then back in there. Okay, so I've created 2 V-stitches so far. The next place is there, so we'll put a V-stitch in there. Chain 1, double crochet, get that white yarn out of the way. Don't want to crochet that into the mix. Alright, yarn over, go through 2. Okay, that's 3 V-stitches. You got 2 more. You got a V-stitch here, that white, and then one at the end. So continue going. Chain 1, double crochet. Alright, and then double crochet in that last V-stitch. Chain 1, double crochet back into the same space. Try to crochet the stitch marker. And this is what you have. Okay, so remember, color 2 always crochets into the V stitches, while color 1, the white, it crochets in between the V stitches, and that's what creates that staggering. Okay, so we completed row 1, row 2, row 3, and row 4, and now we're moving on to row 5. We're going to make the sweep big, put our stitch marker on it so we don't lose it while we work with the other yarn. And because both stitch markers are on the same edge, we can now turn our work. So now it's time to work with color 1 again. Remember, color 1 works between the V stitches. Alright, so let's make sure our yarn is not in the way. Just kind of situate yourself. Okay, so we have our yarn. We're working with color 1, which is the white. We see there's a V stitch and there's a V stitch. But remember, with color 1, we don't work in to the V stitches, we work in between them. So we got to work in there and in there and in there, right? So the first thing that we're going to do is start out with a standing double crochet. So just pull up, hold, wrap, yarn over, while holding still, go through like that. Now we can let go and hold it there, yarn over, go through. Okay, we're going to leave that just like that, and we're only going to crochet 1. Okay, now we're going to start to work on our V stitches. So we're yarn over, and remember, we always go back to the previous row of the same color. So this is row 5, so we're going to skip row 4 and go down to the row 3. Here are the 2 V stitches, 1, 2. Okay, this is row 4, this is row 3. So our double crochet is not going to go right there because that's row 4. It's going to go back down to the white, which is row 3. So go down there, yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, chain 1 because we're creating a V stitch now, yarn over, go in there, pull through to the front, just try not to grab any of the other yarn. Okay, yarn over, go down in there, make sure you're not grabbing any of the other yarn or stitch marker. Okay, so here's that yarn that's out of the way. The stitch marker is out of the way. Well, it was until I put it in the way. Okay, yarn over, pull through to the front. It's nice and clean. Yarn over, go through 2. Yarn over, go through 2. Alright, so this row started with just that starting chainless double crochet, and then we did our first V stitch in between this V stitch and that V stitch. Let's move on to the next V stitch. Yarn over. This is the next V stitch, that's the next one, so we want in between, but remember we go down to the previous row of the same color, which is there. Yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, chain 1, go back into the same space and create another double crochet. Okay, let's do it again. Yarn over. This is the next V stitch, that's the one thereafter, so in there, and we go down to the row of the same color, chain 1 and make another one, another double crochet. Alright, and it's squishing these V stitches of color 2. Okay, let's see, next one. There's a V stitch and there's a V stitch, so we yarn over, and we're going to go down here though and create another V stitch. So there's a double crochet, chain 1, go back in there, create another double crochet. Okay, so that's that V stitch. And remember, you always want it to be symmetrical. So over here we started with a chainless double crochet, so we want something similar over here. So over here, if you go down to this standing double crochet. That's what we're gonna put, just a regular double crochet there, like that. Okay, so you see that we started with one stitch, and then we did the V stitches, and then we ended with that one stitch on the end. Because we crocheted V stitches in between the V stitches, it smushed them down, and that is what is creating that little pocket effect. Okay, it's so beautiful. Alright, so like always, once you get to the end, add your stitch marker like that. And you know that it's not time to turn your work because the other stitch marker is on this end. Okay, so we need to work with this one. So let's take the stitch marker off. Okay, so we have completed 5 rows. This white was row 1 using color 1. Row 2 was this turquoise using color 2. The next white was row 3. The next turquoise was row 4. The next white was row 5. And now we are on row 6. Remember, with color 2, which is this turquoise, we always work into the V stitches. So there, that's into the V stitch. So it's the case there. Into the V stitch, into the V stitch, instead of in between them. Okay, so if we're looking at this, we say, okay, this is the first V stitch, then that should tell us that that's the first place that we need to crochet. But Atreyu, our loop is way over here. It's not a problem. Let me show you how we can alleviate this. So since this is the first V stitch that we're going to crochet into, we're going to insert our hook into that V stitch. And then we're going to take this loop and just put it on to our crochet hook. Tighten by pulling it. And then we're going to pull it through like that. Okay, so now we're exactly where we need to start. Now we're going to do a chainless double crochet. Alright, so just pull up a little bit, hold it, wrap it around, continuing to hold, yarn over, pull through. Now hold it there, yarn over, and pull through. We're in this V-stitch, so what do we do in the V-stitches? We make V-stitches. So we have one of the double crochets made. It's a chainless double crochet, but it's a double crochet nonetheless. So now we chain one and make another double crochet back into that same space to create the V-stitch. Alright, so now we've created a V-stitch in that V-stitch below. Moving on, because we only crochet into the V-stitches, we're going to go here. That's the next place. Yarn over, go into the V-stitch. Notice I did not chain one beforehand. The chain one only comes when you're creating the V-stitch. We're creating the V-stitch here, so chain one and go back in there and make another double crochet. Okay, the next V-stitch is there, so we'll create a V-stitch there. Chain one and make another double crochet going back in there. Any more V-stitches? Oh yeah, there's one more there. Yarn over, go in there, double crochet, chain one, and make another double crochet into that V-stitch. Okay. So, because of the staggering, you notice that this row, row 6, only has 4 V's, which is the same as row 2. Remember, there were only 4 V's down here. 1, 2, 3, 4, or V stitches. Up here, there are 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so this is where we end. We'll draw up, add our stitch marker, put that on. And now that both stitch markers are on the same edge, we can turn our work. Okay. And we're working with color 1, which is the white. So we'll take that stitch marker off. And now it's time to work on row 7. So get your yarn situated so that it's not tangling. Alright, once you do that, now we're going to start out with a V-stitch. So we're going to start out like before with a standing double crochet. So hold it, wrap, yarn over, pull through like that, hold it, yarn over, and pull through. Now we're going to chain 1, and just like before, in between that stitch and this stitch of that V-stitch, we're going to crochet a double crochet to complete the V-stitch on the edge. Okay, you see it does. And remember, with color 1, this white yarn, we only work in between the V-stitches. So here's a V-stitch, there's a V-stitch, so we work in between there. Here's a V-stitch, there's a V-stitch, so we work in between there. There's a V-stitch, there's a V-stitch, so we work in between there. And not only do we only work in between the V-stitches, but we have to go down to the previous row of the same color when we insert our hook. So we've created this V-stitch. This is the next set of V-stitches, which means we work in between them, but we have to go down to this row, which was the last time we used white. Okay, so don't insert your hook here, go down here so that it'll scrunch up these stitches there. So yarn over, go down to the previous white row, make sure you're not crocheting over that turquoise, get it out of the way. Pull through to the front, 3 loops, as it should be. Yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. We are creating a V-stitch here, so chain 1, and then yarn over, go in to the same place, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. Okay? So V-stitch, V-stitch, and then yarn over and just go in between the V-stitches again. Chain 1, double crochet, the next set, that and that. So yarn over, but go down to the previous white row and make sure we're not catching anything we shouldn't. Create the V-stitch, chain 1, another double crochet in that same area. Okay, remember, you always want it to be symmetrical, so think about what you did, how you started this row, and that's how you're going to end it. So over here we see we have this stitch, so we want to create a V-stitch over here. So yarn over, go down in there like that, okay, and create your first double crochet. Chain 1 because we are creating a V-stitch, and then yarn over, then go into the top of that standing double crochet to create the second double crochet, and that creates the V-stitch on that end. Okay, and that's what you have. So as you can see, and it looks better on this side, this is the Moroccan stitch. So you just keep alternating in this fashion. Okay, alright, so now that we're over here, we'll pull up and put our stitch marker on. Ask yourself at this point, do you turn your work? Nope, because the other stitch marker is still over here. So that means that we have to work with this and get it over there before we turn our work. So pull up on that. Alright, so remember, you're working with color 2, and color 2 only works in the V-stitches. Okay, where's the first V-stitch of row 7? Oh, it's right there. So that's where we're going to insert our crochet hook. We'll put the loop on the hook. We will tighten, and then we're going to pull it through. All right. Now we're going to do a standing double crochet. So give yourself some slack. Hold on. Wrap. Yarn over. Pull through like that. Yarn over, hold, and go through like that. Chain one because this is a V-stitch. Yarn over and go back into that same space. Pull through to the front, create a double crochet. Then yarn over and go through two. That's the first V-stitch. Remember, we only crochet into the V's with this color 2 yarn. So the next V-stitch is here. Yarn over, go in, create a V-stitch, double crochet, chain one, back into the same place. Our second double crochet, completing a V-stitch. Find the next V-stitch, which is here. Double crochet, chain one, go back into there, make your second double crochet to complete the third V-stitch. 1, 2, 3. Find the next V-stitch, which is there. Yarn over, go in, creating a double crochet, chain one, go back into the same place to create another double crochet, completing that fourth V-stitch. And then your final V-stitch is here. So yarn over, go into the chain one space, creating a double crochet, chain one because it's a V-stitch, and then create a second stitch there like that. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as it should be. Remember, the rows are staggered, so some rows you're gonna have 4 of the color 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, like row 2. But then look in row 4, it's 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then row 6, you have 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And now that we're at row 8, we have 5 again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So we are going to end now. Okay. So obviously you would just continue going in this fashion until you got to your desired length. If you were making a scarf, you go much further. If you were making a pot holder, then you would only probably have a little bit further to go. Maybe you're at the halfway point. You know, obviously it's your personal preference, but I want to show you now how to end. So the first thing that I'm going to say is that you want to end with the same color that you start with. Obviously we started with the white because that was color 1. So we're going to end with the white. And since we're at white, that means that we're going to be done once we get back over here. We will be able to turn our work at this point because both loops are on the same edge. Obviously I didn't put a stitch marker here because I'm about to fasten off with this, but normally I would put a stitch marker and 2 stitch markers on one edge, on the same edge, tell you that it's okay to turn. So let me chain 1 at this point, cut my yarn because I'm done with it, I'm not going to use it anymore, and then fasten off. We can weave this in with our darning weaving tapestry needle, and I'll show you how to do that later. But for now, let's turn our work, and we're going to finish this final 9th row using color 1. Alright, so this is what we have. Okay, so we have our loop. We'll insert our crochet hook and just give yourself a little slack because we're going to make a standing double crochet. Put your finger on the back, holding it in place, and then wrap it, and now yarn over, and then go through like that. Then yarn over, hold it here, and then pull that through. That is our standing double crochet. Now remember, we only work in between the V's when we're working with color 1. So we're going to leave that like that right there. And now we're going to yarn over, also when we work in between the V's, we go down to the previous row of the same color. So we're working with white, so we go down to the white to create that double crochet. So not in there where we go, but down here. Pull it through, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, chain 1 because it's a V stitch. Alright, and this is what it looks like. So we started with the standing double crochet, we did a V stitch, and now we're just going to continue working in between the V's down a couple of rows. So here are the next 2 V's, but we're going to go not there but down, okay, to the row that we last used white. Chain 1, go down there, create that second double crochet, completing that second V stitch. 1, 2. The next place between this and this one, but down here, we go in, create a double crochet, chain 1, go into the same space, creating another double crochet, completing the third V stitch. We have one more, which is down here. So that V, we have the crochet in between, and we're going to go down to there. So I've yarned over, go in, yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, chain 1 because it's a V stitch, yarn over, go back into that same area, that same hole, and yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, completing our 4th V stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now when it's time to figure out how to end the row, remember that you want to maintain symmetry. So to figure out how to finish the row, think about how you started it. Well, here I just started with a standing double crochet, right? Yes. So on this end, well, we're not going to do standing, right? That wouldn't make sense with what we're working with, but we can do a regular double crochet. So we'll yarn over, and this into this standing double crochet there, we'll just put a regular double crochet. So just go into the top of it, trying to get 2 loops on there. Okay, like that. Yarn over, pull through to the front, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. Now we'll cut our yarn because I imagine this is the end of your project. It sure is the end of mine. Chain 1 and fasten it off like that. Okay. So this is the Moroccan stitch, you guys, and I know it can seem confusing, but I promise you, once you really start to pay attention to the patterns that are happening, kind of unfolding right before your eyes, you will definitely get it. Okay, so let's weave in some of these tails. So for this one, we'll just grab our tapestry needle, feed it through, grabbing it, and then obviously you want to go through the white stitches. So just go through some white in one direction, hold your stitches while you're pulling, and then we'll feed it and go back in the other direction, just going through the white as well. I kind of like to come out the corner. I don't know why, but I do. Alright, like that. Stretch it back out, and then you can cut this excess off now. Alright, and then in terms of these that kind of just hang in the way, you might be thinking, how am I gonna weave that in there because that white is kind of going over it? Well, all you have to do is insert your hook going through the spots where you want it to go through, like that. Okay, so see, I've gone through the blue or turquoise and now that your needle is already in there, now you can feed it. So feed it through the eye of the tapestry needle so that once it's on there like that, once it's already on your needle, all you have to do is pull through like that. Okay, pulling that through, and then just go back in the other direction. So go through those turquoise stitches again, just pull through. Alright, and then once you're done, can cut that down as well. Okay, so just weave in this tail and that one the same way. Okay, so I have weaved in the rest of the tails, and I know this might still be a little bit confusing for you, so at this point I'm going to just talk a little bit about this project and hopefully give you some things that will help you successfully get this pattern embedded in your brain. Okay, so the first thing is that you want to make sure that you're maintaining symmetry. Okay, so what you do on one edge, you want to do it on the other. Here, back in row 1, we have these series of chains, and then we have a V-stitch, right? Over here, the way we end it was we have this V-stitch, and then we were left with 2 chains, and we put 1 double crochet on the end so that it would match this series of chains there. So stitch, V-stitch, and then stitch, V-stitch. Okay. The next thing to note is that whatever color 1 is for you, so in this case it was white, that is the same color that you're also going to end with, okay, so that it has a more complete look. You don't want these turquoise V's just kind of flopping around, right? You want that nice white border that is here and also on the sides. Also, speaking of color 2, which is once again the turquoise in this swatch, some rows you're going to have 4 in this case, and then other rows you're going to have 1 more, 5 in this case. Okay, so some rows will have more V's than others, and you're just going to alternate. So whatever the 2 numbers are for you, you're going to alternate between them. Okay, so for me it's 4, 5, and then 4 again, and then 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The reason that that is happening is because it's all part of the staggering effect. Okay, so just make sure that you're maintaining the right number of V's in color 2. The next point that I want to make, hopefully which will help you guys keep track of what you're doing, is that on the rows where you have fewer V's of the color 2, so in this case turquoise, 1, 2, 3, 4, you always start out that next row, so in this case white, with a V. Okay, so you'll start with the standing double crochet, you'll chain 1, and then you'll make a double crochet in between the stitch below and the first stitch of the V, that next adjacent V. Okay, so because this one, row 2 with the turquoise, only had 4 V's, then I knew that when it was time to start row 3, I need to start out with a V. Okay, and just think about it. You're starting out with a V because in that very next row you're going to have an extra V stitch of color 2. So V, and then also you need to note that the V's go in between the V's of color 2. So you have a row with 4 V's, and because it is a color 1 row, you work in between the V's. Okay, so this V is in between that and that, this V is in between that and that, this V is in between that and that. So color 1 always works in between the V's, and it always goes back 2 rows to crochet. So notice I didn't crochet up here, I went down to the previous white row, and that's where I inserted my hook. There. Okay, the next thing that I want to say is that the rows where you have 5 V stitches of color 2, so that very next row, okay, notice how when it was time for the row thereafter, I started with the standing double crochet, so I didn't do a V stitch right there, right? So if you just completed the row where you have more V stitches of the color 2, then that should be an indication that you only start out with the 1 stitch, the 1 standing double crochet. And because you start out with the 1 standing double crochet, you're going to end with just the one double crochet to keep that symmetry. Okay, so notice how in this one I have 4 V-stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, but when it was time to do the white row, I started with that V. So I did the standing double crochet, chain 1, and then the double crochet in between that first edge of the V-stitch and that stitch that this is coming out of. Okay, so basically the point is I did the V. I started with the V because this had only 4 V-stitches of color 2. Okay, and then once again I worked in between the V's. So there I worked in between those 2, there I worked in between those 2, there I worked in between those 2. Started with the V-stitch, so that tells me, even before I'm showing you on camera, that I should have ended with the V-stitch. Let's look, and yes I did. Okay, so that it's right there. That's the first part, chain 1, and then that's the second part. Okay, now looking at color 2, remember that color 2, that's the turquoise, only crochets into the V-stitch, not in between them. So let's double check our work. This V-stitch, it's color 2 right here, it's in that V-stitch. This V-stitch is in that one, this V-stitch is in that one, that V-stitch is in that one. Okay, let's look at this row. This V-stitch is in that V-stitch. Remember, this only had 4 V-stitches of color 2, so I needed to create a V-stitch at the beginning, and then I needed to end with the V-stitch so that it was symmetrical. But the point is, color 2 is in that V-stitch, it's in that one, it's in that one, that one's in that one, and that one is in that one. Let's go to this one. This V-stitch is in that one, this V-stitch is in that one, it's in that one, and that one's in that one. And then this V-stitch is in that one, that one's in that one, that one's in that one, and that one is in that one. So I know I'm beating this over the head, but I just want to make sure you guys have it. Color 1, it works its V-stitches between the V-stitches. So color 1 works its stitches in between the V-stitches. Color 2 works its stitches into the V-stitches. Okay? So hopefully that will help you guys get the hang of this. Just take it step by step. Take your time, and if you get confused, just go back to the video and reference what I did. It will, I promise you, all start to come together. Once you realize what it is that you're trying to achieve, what you're doing, and just remember that you can't turn your work until both stitch markers are on one edge. Also, for these rows, like here, you completed that and you completed the white, but it was time to work that one. Remember that since you're only working into the V-stitches, that white V-stitch was there, and the loop was attached to this, and it was over here. It was kind of over here behind, right? So what I did was, since I'm only crocheting into V-stitches, I needed to insert my hook there, grab the loop and pull it forward, and then that started me off so I could complete these 4. Okay, so every time you're on a color 2 row where you have fewer V-stitches, you're gonna have to do that. You're gonna have to find the first V-stitch, stick your crochet hook in there, grab the loop from that color 2 color, bring it forward, and then start your V-stitch crochet. Okay, alright guys, that is it for this tutorial. You know I'll see you on the next one. In the meantime, happy crocheting.